Graham Standish. I'm the Executive Director of Samaritan Counseling, Guidance Consulting. And we have a special interview that we want to share with you because it's an interview with someone that both I and we at Samaritan consider to be a really remarkable man. I'm going to introduce you to Bobby Vandrak. Bobby, I have known Bobby since he was 4 years old. That's been a long time. On his lap is my dog, Rora, who decided she really wanted to be part of the interview. I hope that's okay with all of you. Bobby, as I just said a little while ago, I've known you since you were 4 years old. I really had the pleasure of being your pastor for 22 years, that's how long I think I've known you. I was pastor of your church when your family joined, and you were about 4 years old. So I have seen you grow up and have been able to witness all the things that you have done in your life. Bobby was very much involved at the Life of Calvin Presbyterian Church. Bobby was in 1 million plays that took place at Calvin Church, including, I think, Godspell, Jesus Christ Superstar. Can you think of other plays that you were in?
Yeah, we did Honk. That was a big one. And then we did Joseph.
Yeah.
And then we did, my senior year, we did we did Schoolhouse Rock when I was in 9th grade. And then 10th grade, I'm trying to think what we did. We did a
Songs for a New Millennium.
We did some different songs and everything.
And by the way, your brother did a fantastic job in Hamilton of playing the part of the king. Singing. It was incredible. Bobby also was president of his high school class. He was actually homecoming king at Pitt one year. Bobby, it just seems like Bobby has been involved in so many things throughout his life. And one of the things when I introduce Bobby as a remarkable man, I've seen both him and his family. They have been incredibly involved in all sorts of ministries and mission, and central to that has been caring about others. Your mom is actually trained as a social worker and as a therapist now. Your dad was a doctor up in Newcastle and just a tremendous doctor. But even beyond that, Bobby, you and your whole family were really involved in all sorts of missions. And I want to actually have you share with people one of the things I think is remarkable and makes me feel completely inadequate as a father, because your mom, every year, and I'm kidding about that, but your mom, when all of your brother and your sisters got to certain ages, your mom took you on mission trips. And you got to pick the mission trip. Talk a little bit about the mission trip you picked, and you were 15 years old at the time?
I was 17.
17
It was
years
the
old.
summer after 11th grade for everything.
Okay.
So we went to Mexico City in 2015. And the reason we went was because the neighboring church to Calvin, Harmony Zelienople Methodist Church, yes. They always do, every other year, they would do a trip to Mexico City. And we were I knew a lot of the kids, and then my mom was friends with one of the families that always went, the Villegases. Mm-hmm. And then over the year, my mom was kind of asking me, where would you want to go, and what would you want to do? My sister had went to Peru, and then my oldest sister had went to Lithuania. And they were kind of just trips that kind of called at the time, and I was just thinking, where should we want to go? And then I finally just said, why don't we go to Mexico City with the neighboring church and their group. And so we kind of decided to do that. It was a really cool experience. We went for a week. They had a lot of connections down there. They knew where to go. And we did some different things, a lot of health related things. I was actually in charge of the eye exams. So I guess I took 4 years of Spanish.
Okay.
And they used me to kind of translate and do the eye exams of the different patients people in the communities that would come in. And it was just a really interesting experience. It was very eye-opening. I kind of thought it ended up just being the perfect thing all around because it felt like a very comfortable situation. Like it was just the right time and place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and is there anything in particular that you came away from that experience with?
Oh yeah. I would say the biggest thing I came away with it is that I learned that even though there was a language barrier, everyone was kind of united under this. Like it made me realize that people just, no matter where they are in the world, we're all kind of experiencing the same thing of just living and being alive, and we all have this like soul, and we're just kind of connecting. And even though they couldn't really understand me, especially like it was a lot of elderly people
Yeah.
that came in, and some of them couldn't really see and everything. They were just so comforting and comfortable.
Yeah.
And it made me really realize how, even though there's almost 8 billion people in the world, that we all kind of come together and unite
Yeah.
under this like experience of just,
Yeah,
just living.
it's almost, we may not verbally share the same language, but everybody does understand love, compassion, and as you're caring for them, they're caring for you.
Yes. And
That's-
it was just, for a mission trip, it was very unique because I had never been on one to a place where there was such a language
Yeah.
barrier.
So your dad also was a huge influence on you, and your dad, I told you this before we started. Your dad died suddenly driving home from work. He was a medical doctor at a hospital up in Newcastle and died on the way home. It was one of the most difficult funerals that I've ever done in my life, just because I considered your dad a friend and your whole family a friend. But your dad was a huge influence on you also. I mean, I know a lot of times your dad would pile everybody in the car and say, hey, we're going to go do this. Sometimes it was just an experience, sometimes it was helping. But your dad really lived a life of service. What was the influence of your dad on you?
I would say the biggest influence that my dad had when it comes to just other people and like living life was that when we had the funeral viewing and the funeral, there were people at the that just hung out at the gas station in town, buy low gas and go. And they were just like people that kind of, one of them worked there, and then it was like 2 of their friends who were older, and they came and were just like weeping and weeping. They were like, you don't understand, like your dad just always took the time to talk to us. I feel like a lot of people didn't acknowledge us or didn't care for us and like stuff like that. And just going forward, when I still see them, like even this past summer and into the fall, they're not there in the winter because it's cold, but
Yeah.
like they just still like talk about my dad and how he gave them this time and he made them feel so special and like gave them free medical help with like different things. And it just really made me, to this day, like live my life with like, when you are talking to another person, like you don't know how much of an impact just giving them the
Yeah.
time of day and like showing that you care, even though like it's just in passing.
No, and I've seen that influence on you because I've seen you wherever you walk, you stop and will talk to almost everybody. So it takes
Yeah.
you, a 50-yard walk will take you, basically 25 minutes to get there.
Yeah.
How did your dad's dying impact you? And how did it impact your whole sense of generosity and caring about others?
When my dad passed away, it really opened a lot of. We had this paper that was like, just tell us like, memories or things like that, and it really just showcased that like with him, like it was. I guess I'll do like 2 different things. The way that it impacted me was that it just made me want to like show people love and everything, but then on the other hand, it showed me that there was so much that he did that was just he never talked about.
Yeah.
And it really reminded me of like, which is very biblical with the Pharisees and everything like that that you don't want to, like, you shouldn't go to the temple and just like brag about yourself. Like, you should be humble and everything like that. And not that I was having necessarily trouble with being humble, but like it just really showed me like that you want to, like, you should do your best deeds out of just the goodness of your heart versus wanting to talk about it and everything. So with him passing away, it really showed me that with life, like, you just have to keep going. You have to continue to it really, I feel like I had a moment where I was like, I'm going to be like bitter and sad and mad about this, but it really ended up like turning into a switch of like, I'm going to use this to the best of my ability, I guess.
To make a difference in life.
To make a difference.
Yeah. And I think also what you're kind of circling around is small things matter.
Yes.
Not people noticing the small things, but the small things matter.
Yes.
So as a result of all of this, you know, the influence of your family, but decisions you've made, generosity has always been kind of central to your life.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that. How has this idea of generosity been really important in the way you live?
So I would say like the biggest thing with generosity and how I live is that you just have to use your gifts and give what you can to make a difference. And I think we're going to talk about this in a little bit, but when I got diagnosed with my mental health problems, I thought it was kind of the same thing with like when my dad passed away. It was like, I have all this ability and connection to use this to change like people's lives, and I'm going to do whatever I can, whether it's $1 here or like $3,000 for Samaritan this year. And that generosity, like, I think the biggest thing too is the biggest thing you can give is just your own gifts and your time and your energy to change things.
So let me talk about that, because you know, you say giving your gifts, and I think this is important, and I do want you to talk about your diagnosis. You were diagnosed 3 years ago?
2 years ago.
2 years ago.
A little more than 2 years ago.
Go ahead, and what was your diagnosis?
It was schizoaffective disorder, bipolar type.
Right, and so you really, it's a disorder of, well, explain what are the struggles with the disorder?
So it basically combines like the schizophrenia symptoms of the positive, they call them positive, but really it's like psychotic symptoms, and the negative, which is kind of like the loss of some of your like emotions and stuff like that. It kind of can make you a little more flat. And then it combines that with the bipolar symptoms of mania and depression. Just kind of alternating and stuff like that. And
you have been very fastidious about taking medication and getting help for this. And so this is where I think is really important. So you've had you've had this diagnosis, and it's you know, people don't want to be diagnosed with mental health disorders. You know, there's such a stigma against it that it's almost, you'd rather be diagnosed with cancer, or you'd rather be diagnosed with some other syndrome, because it feels like, there's so much judgment about this. That's something that can make people isolate, feel bitter, angry, whatever. You talked about how generosity is giving your gifts. You turned your mental health diagnosis from what could be felt as a detriment, and you turned it into a gift. Tell me a little bit about that.
With the mental health diagnosis, just like this fundraiser, that I kind of saw an opportunity. I just kind of created this to help people like that, and I knew I had all these, you know, I knew a lot of people, I had a lot of connections, I was a runner. And then with just going off of that too, being so open about it has really made people reach out to me and just find, like, they ask for, help. They ask for advice. They talk to me about, like, people just message me. They're like, things are not going great. Like, how can I get help? Like, what do I need to do? Like, and stuff like that. And then with the, and on top of this, I've been very open about not drinking for almost 3 years coming up. And that too has really, a lot of people have come to me looking for advice on either how to like stop or get treatment or limit it. And just sharing my experience has really opened the door to just helping a lot of people and making people feel more normalized and more like that they're not alone.
And what you've done is you've taken, again, a detriment and you've turned it into an opportunity. You've taken something that feels like a problem and you've turned it into a possibility. And as we close, I do want to talk about this, that Bobby turned his diagnosis into an opportunity to raise funds, both for Samaritan and what was the other organization?
It used to be called SARDA, but they changed the name to the Schizophrenia and Psychosis Action Alliance.
Yeah, and so Bobby raised almost $6,000 that split it in half, one for them, one for Samaritan. And it's really an opportunity to make a difference in both places, to help people with mental health needs, to help train counselors, to do things like that. And I think that what's really so, to me, important and fascinating is that you've taken something that has a stigma and you've turned it into a blessing by inspiring people. What Bobby did as a fundraiser is he simply said, I want people to contribute to a fundraiser for him to do a 10 mile 10K?
10 mile.
10 mile run around North Park. We're going to put some pictures up that show Bobby and his aunt who ran, and his family and others decided to do a walk. They decided not to run, but we're going to be putting up pictures for that. And I realize the dog is a bit distracting. I'm sorry about that. She wants her blankie, and she can't figure out how to get it.
Should I grab it for
No, she'll figure it out. But at any rate, yeah, and I do want to just say how grateful we are at Samaritan for this, but also just recognizing how important what you did is, but also how it's an example to people, because sometimes in our culture we have this scarcity mindset. I've got all of this and I've got to protect it. And Bobby, what you did was you said, I've got this, which most people would protect and keep a secret. And you basically shouted it out to the world and said, because I have this, let's use this as a way of making a difference. And so, actually on behalf of Samaritan, I really wanted to say we are so appreciative of what you did, and also appreciative of you taking the time to let us interview you for this so that we can share this with others as really an inspiration to really invite people to be generous. And we hope that you'll be generous to Samaritan, but we just hope you'll be generous in general, because there is something I can say as a pastor, as a therapist, as a person. Some of the best things you can do if you're struggling with mental health issues is to find ways to be grateful, to find ways to be inspired, and to find ways to give rather than to shrink. And I think, Bobby, that's what you've done, and we are so appreciative. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much, and thank you for all you guys do too in the community and everything, and for agreeing to be a recipient.
Well, that's not a problem for us.
Yeah, and just being so appreciative and like thankful and everything like that.
Yeah.
It really is great to do this for you guys, and knowing Graham for so long and his whole family.
Well, and I will say as a final thing, Bobby, having known you since you were 4, I am so proud of you, and I've had this privilege of being able to watch you grow up and to watch your family grow up, and so for me this is a real joy to be part of this with you and to have you do this, so thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much.